it's Bones for Brains, and today I wanted to talk about how you can use science in your fiction to make it more interesting. So, this is coming from someone who has written a book before. It's not yet been published yet. I'm currently working on a second part and kind of mushed together sequel with the original book, so that'll be out hopefully by the end of 2025, yeah. Look out for it. It's probably going to be either Silver Stitch or Brambleweave. Still working on that name. It's going to be great though. So I'm going to be quickly talking about how you can factor in various elements of science and scientific study into your world building. So let's go ahead and get started right off the bat with some, smaller terms and, smaller ways that, of course, oh yeah, everyone thinks of this. The kind of the obvious statement out there for people who might not be as experienced in the world of world building and creation. So some things about, as an author, you want to think about before you even start really working on putting your story to paper, which I found is incredibly helpful for, helping you to get your thoughts out there at the very start, is to just have a world. Have a world where everything takes place. And this can be as simple as, just, oh, well, this is just the ancient Japanese ecosystem, but then I put dinosaurs in there, and along with, modern day organisms and humans, and maybe throw in a woolly mammoth if we're being crazy. But that's, of course, that's the more historical fiction. And so what I want to add in is also the possibility for just making your own world. And that's something that I wanted to do for my work, Silver Stitch. I'm just going to be using Silver Stitch as a blanket statement for this, because Silver Stitch is the one that I finished writing. So in the world of Silver Stitch, I wanted to focus on a kind of almost Pokemon-like organization system. And this is, if you want to use a magic system or any kind of, broken down, really, class-heavy, race-heavy system of organizing your world. And so what I did for my world is I organized it into, I believe, 9 major elements. And those elements consist of the major crafting supplies. And so that could be like wood, glue, thread, metal, so, people make rings and stuff, plastic, felt. And all of this is so that I had a base area for what I could build my flora and fauna on, and that way I could make sure I had all of my major elements represented and had kind of a bounce board. And so what you do when you begin creating a world for yourself is that you want to make sure that you know kind of what you're going for. Whether that's a specific vibe, such as fantasy, or you want to make the world seem dangerous and chaotic. Maybe you want your story to be a lot more driven by man versus nature and man versus monster rather than man versus man, or man versus, himself. And so in order to do that, you might want to make your world a lot more dangerous and, filled with these monsters and filled with really sharp, pointy things. And of course, on the other flip side, if you want to have your story solely focused on political and, the really high up stuff of that, what you might want to do is have your world be almost oddly safe, and then have it be kind of like as we are now with human beings. We are the apex predator in the world, and that's what sometimes makes it so fascinating to go into the world where, oh, well, now there's Godzilla and we just completely nuked Godzilla because we are effectively a super race of things that can take down nearly anything that we are handed. We could break the whole world if we really, really wanted to. So I think taking a step back from that, depending on how advanced you want your civilization to how far along you want your animals, plants, monsters to be, is a great way to just start off and figure out how you want to shape your story. So once you have your core elements of what you want your story to be based loosely around, some things that you can start doing are looking more around your modern environment and looking at the relationships between, it doesn't really matter how I organize these trees in this area and all that good stuff. Weather patterns, who needs them? I can just throw things in there. But the thing you don't really realize when you start writing is that everything is going to have a role in how your story plays out, and something that you might consider, oh, well, just jot that down. It could come in really handy later. For example, so I wanted to design a quick little water area or water biome for my story. So with that being included, I also had to include, okay, well, I want little kind of metal sea urchin type creatures. I want dragonflies fluttering around. And then I had to consider, what is the implications of having a river system in a world where there's, this infection going around and this inky rot happening, and how will the supplies within this river slowly dwindle and force the characters into more and more precarious situations to gather these specific supplies that are needed for healing. You can use, even, I ended up using the sea urchin-like creature as a kind of necessary item for administering medicine, because the pins work really well as needles. And so this is a great way that you can use your world building to kind of drive the story, drive your characters to do things as these resources dwindle, or as you have them move around and have to figure out new solutions to previously solved problems. Even if it's just, fighting over territory, well, just like we can see even today in our human society how much, humans that have basically infinite access to resources fight over just the level of how expensive things are. I mean, you would be surprised by how many wars are fought and how many arguments are started because one person didn't want to pay $5 more for gas, which is understandable, because at the end of the day, everyone's trying to make their living and everyone's trying to survive. And, we gotta keep relations good and, keep that economy flowing. So, yeah, everything's, you can always add as much or as little complexity to it as you want. And so, moving on from that, once you have, your basic flora, fauna, all that accounted for, it can be really helpful to kind of continue to shape your world as you kind of push yourself to get those things in there. And now, of course, there's always those people who will say, oh, well, you shouldn't try, but of course, I'm saying that's like really negative, but no, it's generally really good advice to try and keep out as much from your story as you can, and only really give those crucial details that the reader needs to understand your story, which, prevents it from getting overly long and tedious and, oh my gosh, I don't want to read about how the river works for 15 chapters. No one cares. And they're probably right. Edgar Allan Poe always said only use as many words as you really need, and that's not an exact quote. I don't remember his exact quote. But I would also encourage you to just go ahead and flesh out your world, because a lot of times if you push yourself to include those extra elements, it can also really help to spark some more story ideas for places that you previously thought would be perfectly fine. And, good and dandy. For example, in the second part of my book, don't want to really give too many spoilers, but I wanted to include a kind of man versus man element to the journey to a major city after the infection started. So I'm going to have my main group kind of progress through, and they're going to find, an abandoned building. And something that I've been struggling with is that I wasn't able to include a certain race as much as I wanted, and, what am I supposed to do with this? So in having these extra races created, I could simply figure out, oh, well, I haven't included a lot of religion into my story, and by, religion is also a really great thing that I highly encourage to add into your story, especially if you are someone who, like me, was forced, but, put into the church system for quite a long while, and I now have a extensive knowledge of the Bible. Even though I ended up not staying with that necessarily. But I can now use tons of biblical influences in my book while skating around exactly, going into the Bible. So I was able to create a kind of cult-like biblical area based on an old church within my book, and while also kind of delving into that interesting area of biblically accurate angel, and what if it was not exactly an angel? What if it was something different and twisted and sick? And so I think that's a really good thing. Which, actually, speaking of sick, brings me to a next fun thing that I think more people should definitely include, and I'm pretty sure is definitely already included in the things I just read a lot about dragons and nothing else. Magical diseases. Consider that you now have, as an author, the power to make anything you want real. You don't just have to worry about those monsters. Oh no. You can give your characters some sort of horrible black plague to deal with, And that's, you know, up to you how much you want to make your character suffer, but I do enjoy giving my characters a little bit of suffering. So something you could do is figuring out something that's, you know, not even just specifically your characters. You can give this, you know, well, you know, you can't fight a disease that's affecting the crops. So, for example, for a D&D party, that could be a really interesting and really, like, hard to solve problem is how are you going to beat a magical disease that's killing off crops and it's purely just, like, an actual infection? You know, like, and that could take out crops and that could shape the world a lot more, too. Maybe there's, you know, a lot of paranoia going around the kingdom because you know, simply can't get rid of this plague. And I'm just thinking it's a really great idea and plot point that you can throw in there, even if you're not writing something that's specifically based around disease or zombies or anything like that, which I am in fact doing. Because I don't know why I decided that my first novel was going to be a zombie apocalypse of sorts, but it is, and I love it, and it's great. But to speak on, you know, things aside from that as well, but yeah, science and world building. Okay, yes. But getting a bit back more into science, something that I think is, you know, kind of underutilized or something people don't really realize is that even in today, we do kind of have to do a lot of guesswork about what some animals may have looked like. And as more data comes out, we are able to get a better and better idea of what these animals might have looked like. For example, dinosaurs. Oftentimes, if we're looking at the vintage versions of dinosaurs, there's not a lot of good evidence to say, oh, this head fit with this body. And so we ended up with like a lot of weird Frankenstein dinosaurs, and that's what, there are some really old dinosaur statues over in, I forget where, but I believe somewhere in Europe that just look really wonky, like iguanas, but like really big iguanas and stuff. And so those are some good examples of what not dinosaurs look like. And then even, you know, back at the start of the first Jurassic Park, there was a lot of misconceptions surrounding things such as the T-Rex and the Spinosaurus that we now know likely looked a lot different. And so part of the reason we have these misconceptions is because a lot of, like, scientists may have assumed that all dinosaurs were mostly gray and, you know, they didn't have any weird things about them, and you know, T-Rex so big has to be an apex predator, and all that good jazz. And of course, you know, oh, well, you know, if it has this bony ridge, it's going to be right on the bone, as it is with a lot of other reptiles. Well, not exactly. There's a lot of evidence to suggest now that a lot of the dinosaur models that we have had over, you know, back in the 2010s, even a little bit forward, and probably a good bit back, are, you know, probably a good bit inaccurate. And that's what's so fun about learning, that, you know, we can redraw these dinosaurs and make them even more accurate. But that does pose a really good idea is, you know, a lot of artists out there, as I've seen, have taken, you know, different skulls that they've seen. For example, see this skull out here? Make something that's just straight on the skin with this, and there's no fluff, and it doesn't look like a cute cow anymore. It looks like a demon, because it is looking like a demon. And so you can mishmash around elements. That's like a great thing. The Wendigo, for example. Ooh, it's just like a whole, you know, stick and click around and just mess around, and it's a whole monster now. By just playing, you know, Mr. Potato Head with a couple of bones and some fur. And throwing in some dark magic. But I think it is a really good idea to look, if you're short on ideas for monsters, you know, you can mishmash different animals together. You can take the skull of one animal and put it on another animal's body haphazardly, and change around and make it aquatic, or make it live on land, and do all these things to just mess it up. And so that's a really good way to get started on character design and making ideas. A final piece that I want to give is just kind of general writer's advice. Do what you want. Do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be, like, pretty or anything like that, you know? It just has to be yours. It doesn't have to be pretty or perfect or nice or, you know, whatever. It just has to be yours. So get your vision out there, start writing, give yourself a goal. The only reason I really wrote my first book, and I'll admit this, little chest, is that I made it an English assignment. I made it as part of my creative writing, is that I said, yeah, I'm going to write 6 chapters of a book, and I'm going to turn it in as a final grade. and that ended up being a little bit more of a daunting task than I thought it was going to be, because I so lovely decided that this is a great idea. But I'm incredibly grateful that I did it. And I think writing a book, especially when your school feels overwhelming, and it feels like, oh, well, I can't do that because I need to gather all this research. But when you just throw yourself into it and just start writing, write down some ideas, write down what you think about. And then if it feels like you hit a wall, just listen to some music and take your mind off of it. Jump around, look around, go outside, touch some grass. Touch some grass. And it'll come to you eventually. Trust. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's perfect. It doesn't matter if it's good. I mean, J.K. Rowling got, rejected from so many places. It's ridiculous. And then she was finally said yes to. Well, the final buzzer. There are so many, and this is not to crap on anyone's work. This is me just waffling on. There are so many awful authors out there who got their works published. And there's so many terrible books that exist. But I think my favorites have been the absolutely self-indulgent, chaotic little ones where everything is fine in the end and everyone's happy. Or everything went to absolute BS. So just do what you want. And enjoy your creation process, because it is completely up to you, and that's the fun, and that's the freedom of coming up with a book. If you want to self-insert yourself in there and have yourself in a love quadrant, do it. If you want to just have all your characters completely aware that you are a god, and then have them interact with you as if you are, their teacher, have that, or, their god, and just messing with them mentally, do it. That's actually one of my favorite things that I've done before, is that I have made, I think I'm going to have it be 2 of my characters aware that I am a god. And I've had that be a part of, one of my favorite D&D campaigns that I posted, where the main character, it was a demigod created by me, and he was just completely aghast that I had created him, and was incredibly angry about that. And then, of course, quick little fight later, and he's fine. Don't worry about him. Sparkflex is fine. My friends proceeded to demolish him before he was even able to really shine, but it's fine. I'm fine. Point is, though, be self-indulgent. Enjoy your story, because it is for you. If it doesn't get published, you had a fuck ton of fun writing it. So, enjoy yourself. And that's really all I have to say about it. If you guys have any questions about writing a book, if you have any, recommendations about videos to do next time, or if you have some more stuff that you want to, see in upcoming videos, I might continue this project after, this may or may not be another English project. But if you guys want to continue seeing videos about this kind of stuff, I might continue the series, just because, it's getting a little bit easier to talk on camera now that I've done it a couple times. But if you want to hear about anything in specifics, I'm happy to talk about whatever. So anyways, love you guys. Bones for brains out. Bye-bye.